On Christmas Eve 1860, while wealthy plantation owners across Kentucky were toasting their prosperity with fine whiskey and warm fires, a skilled metalworker named Anna Clark was heating lead in the kitchen, but not for the bullets her master had ordered. What happened next in that flickering candlelit room would send shockwaves through the antebellum South and become whispered legend among the enslaved. But here's what history textbooks won't tell you. What drives a human being to cross the line from victim to executioner? And was Anna Clark a cold-blooded killer or the perfect instrument of long overdue justice? December 24th, 1860, Kentucky. The air cuts like broken glass across the Whitmore plantation, where frost clings to bare oak branches like the ghosts of better days. Inside the grand house, crystal chandeliers cast warm amber light across polished mahogany tables, laden with roasted goose, honeyed ham, and imported wine that costs more than most slaves see in a lifetime. The scent of cinnamon and nutmeg drifts from the kitchen, where Anna Clark's calloused hands work the bellows, stoking flames that dance red and orange against cast iron. She knows metal, like other women know thread. 14 years old when they dragged her from the foundry, where her father taught her the ancient alchemy of fire and ore. 28 now, with fingers that can judge temperature by the color of flame, hands that can shape lead like clay. The irony burns deeper than any forge a master metalworker reduced to property, her expertise valued only when it serves her captors. Tonight she heats lead for bullets, each molten drop destined to enforce the very chains that bind her people. Through the kitchen window, she watches Master Edmund Whitmore swagger across the candlelit dining room, his face flushed with brandy and power. His wife Elizabeth titters at his crude jokes, while their guests, fellow plantation owners with soft hands and harder hearts, toast to their prosperity, to another profitable year. Whitmore bellows, his voice carrying the casual cruelty of a man who has never faced consequences. The overseer Jack Morrison lurks near the servants' entrance, his whip coiled at his belt like a sleeping serpent, eyes tracking every movement of the house, slaves who glide between kitchen and dining room like shadows serving light. Anna remembers her mother's face, sold south when cotton prices demanded fresh labor. Her brother Samuel screams when Morrison's whip found his back for the crime of learning to read. Her sister Marie, barely 16, who disappeared into Whitmore's private quarters one night and emerged hollow-eyed and broken. These memories live in her chest like shards of glass, each breath cutting deeper, each passing hour sharpening the edges of her rage into something precise and deadly. The contrast sears her vision. In the dining room, children laugh and clap their hands as servants bring plates of sugared fruits and French pastries. In the quarters, slave children huddle together for warmth, their Christmas feast consisting of cornmeal mush and the scraps their owners deign to share. Whitmore's son receives a silver pocket watch. Anna's people receive permission to rest 1 extra hour before dawn. The master speaks of Christian charity while counting profits built on stolen lives, of divine providence while denying basic humanity to those who make his wealth possible. Steam rises from the lead pot, and Anna sees her reflection wavering in its silver surface, a woman transformed by fire and suffering into something harder than the metal she commands. The kitchen grows quiet except for the whisper of flames and the distant sound of Christmas carols sung by voices that have forgotten what freedom sounds like. Tonight, she heats lead for bullets. Tomorrow, perhaps, she will forge something else entirely. The breaking point arrives with the sharp crack of leather against flesh. Anna's hands freeze on the bellows as 11-year-old Thomas, barely more than a child, stumbles through the kitchen door, his back striped with fresh welts, tears cutting clean tracks down his dirt-stained cheeks. Morrison follows, coiling his whip with the satisfaction of a craftsman admiring his work. Boys spilled wine on Mrs. Elizabeth's dress. He announces to no one in particular, "Christmas Eve don't mean no holiday from discipline." Something crystallizes in Anna's chest, cold and sharp as winter morning air. She watches Thomas collapse beside the wood stove, his small body shaking with pain and exhaustion, and feels the last thread of her endurance snap clean. The child's crime, a trembling hand, nervous under the weight of serving those who own his very breath. His punishment: 10 lashes with a whip designed to mark but not kill, to break spirit without breaking valuable property. Morrison notices her staring, his pale eyes narrow with the predatory intelligence of a man who feeds on others' fear. "Something troubling you, Anna? Maybe you need reminding about Christmas manners, too." He takes a step closer, his hand drifting to the whip handle, and she smells the whiskey on his breath, sees the cruel anticipation in his smile. This is his favorite game, finding reasons to hurt, inventing justifications for cruelty that needs no excuse beyond his own twisted nature. But Anna doesn't flinch. Instead, she turns back to her work, stoking the fire until the lead begins to glow like a fallen star. Her movements become precise, deliberate, each pump of the bellows adding heat and pressure to the molten metal that responds to her will like an extension of her own body. Years of metalwork have taught her patience, the value of perfect timing, the way heat transforms solid matter into liquid potential. Through the doorway, she watches Whitmore raise another toast, this one to the natural order that God himself ordained. His guests applaud, their faces shining with righteousness and brandy, completely unaware that 20 feet away, in a kitchen thick with wood smoke and simmering rage, their divine order is about to face its reckoning. The clock on the mantelpiece chimes 10 times, each note hanging in the air like a countdown. Anna lifts the ladle, testing the lead's consistency with an expert eye. Perfect temperature, perfect fluidity. The metal glows white-hot in the dim kitchen light, beautiful and terrible as molten justice. She sets down her tools and smooths her apron, her pulse steady as bedrock. Christmas Eve, 1860. The night when a metalworker's daughter finally decided that some chains can only be broken by fire. The house settles into its late evening rhythm. Servants clear the final course while guests retire to the parlor for cigars and political discourse about states' rights and the troublesome abolitionist movement. Anna moves through familiar motions, banking the cooking fires, scrubbing pots with movements so routine they require no conscious thought. But her mind calculates with the precision of her father's lessons: temperature, timing, trajectory. The lead maintains its liquid state in the iron pot, glowing like captured lightning, waiting for purpose. Whitmore's laughter booms through the dining room as he regales his guests with tales of recent slave auctions, the prices he commanded for prime breeding stock. Each word lands like a physical blow. But Anna's breathing remains controlled, her hands steady as she measures the weight of the ladle in her palm. 14 ounces of cast iron handle, 3 ounces of molten lead. Enough to balance the scales of 17 years of accumulated debt. She observes the household's choreography with new eyes. Elizabeth Whitmore retires at 10:30, her silk slippers whispering up the curved staircase. The guests drift away by 11, their carriages crunching across frozen gravel. Morrison disappears to his quarters above the barn, drunk on whiskey and the evening's casual violence. Only Whitmore remains, settling into his leather chair beside the fire with a final brandy and tomorrow's correspondence. Anna waits. Her internal clock, refined by years of timing forge, fires, and metal pours, counts each passing minute. She knows his habits like she knows the melting point of different alloys. 11:45, he'll drain his glass. 11:50, he'll check the locks. Midnight, he'll climb the stairs, his steps heavy with alcohol and arrogance, confident in his dominion over every living soul under his roof. But tonight, his confidence proves fatal. The grandfather clock begins its midnight chime as Anna lifts the pot with practiced ease, her calloused palms immune to heat that would blister softer hands. She moves through the servants' passage like water flowing downhill, her bare feet silent on polished wood. The lead maintains perfect consistency, neither too thick nor too thin, the ideal viscosity for what metallurgy calls complete adhesion. Whitmore sits with his back to the doorway, reading a letter by lamplight, completely absorbed in his own importance. The fire casts dancing shadows on the wall, transforming the familiar room into something primordial and biblical. Anna enters his peripheral vision, and he glances up with lazy annoyance. "What do you want, girl? Christmas morning comes early enough without—" His words die as he sees the ladle filled with molten silver, sees the absolute calm in her dark eyes, sees his own death reflected in liquid fire. Understanding floods his face, not just of his immediate fate, but of every choice that led to this moment, every whip crack, every family torn apart. Every night, he spent counting profits, while his property counted scars. Anna moves with the steady precision of 17 years' expertise. Her free hand grabs his jaw, forcing his mouth open as he struggles against the inevitable. His eyes bulge with terror and recognition as she speaks, her voice steady as her grip on destiny itself. For Thomas, for Samuel, for Marie, for all of us. The molten lead pours from the ladle in a silver stream, filling his throat with liquid justice that burns away his capacity for cruelty forever. His body convulses as the metal sears through flesh and bone, transforming his screams into silence, his tyranny into ash. She doesn't flinch as she empties every drop, doesn't look away as 17 years of accumulated debt finds its final payment. This is mathematics made flesh, an equation finally balanced with compound interest. The empty ladle clatters to the floor, its purpose fulfilled at last. They find her at dawn, sitting beside his body like a monument to inevitability. She doesn't run, doesn't hide, doesn't offer excuses or pleas for mercy. When the sheriff's men arrive, she meets their eyes with the same steady gaze that measured temperature by flame color, that transformed base metal into tools of liberation. Her hands rest calm in her lap, still bearing the calluses of honest work, still warm from the forge fire of retribution. The trial becomes theater, but Anna refuses to play her assigned role. White men debate her sanity, her moral capacity, her legal status as property versus person, but she sits silent through their philosophical gymnastics. They cannot understand that she acted not from madness, but from a sanity so complete it transcended their carefully constructed world of justified cruelty. When they sentence her to death, she nods once. When they ask for last words, she speaks just 7. I regret only that I waited so long. The crowd gasps at her audacity, but Anna sees something else in their faces, a flicker of recognition, a whisper of fear that maybe, just maybe, their divine order isn't as stable as they believed. Her execution draws thousands. They come expecting spectacle, a cautionary tale about the consequences of defying natural hierarchy. Instead, they witness something that will haunt their dreams for decades. A woman who walks to the gallows with the dignity of someone who knows she changed the world. Her death ripples through slave quarters from Virginia to Texas, carried by field hands and house servants, drivers and craftsmen who understand that Anna Clark proved something fundamental about the nature of power and resistance. History books will bury her story beneath debates about states' rights and economic inevitability. But in the hidden spaces where enslaved people gather to whisper hope into darkness, Anna Clark's name becomes legend. They speak of the metalworker's daughter who decided that some chains can only be broken by fire, who transformed her skills into the tools of liberation, who proved that even the most carefully constructed tyranny contains the seeds of its own destruction. The Civil War begins 3 months later, but Anna Clark's war started and ended on Christmas Eve, 1860, in a parlor lit by firelight and illuminated by justice. Her story spreads like wildfire through communities that understand the difference between law and righteousness, between property and personhood, between accepting injustice and refusing to let it stand unchallenged. And somewhere in the whispered conversations between mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, her legacy burns eternal. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more than survival. That history belongs not to the comfortable and powerful, but to those brave enough to write its next chapter in fire and blood and uncompromising truth.